Now, Bob, I just wanted to really talk about the current state of the China-Australian relationship. It's drifted further and further away in the last 7 months. Now, could you just summarize for us where we're at and how did we actually get here?
Yeah, Australia's tilt against China began in early 2017, that is under the Prime Ministership of Malcolm Turnbull, and Australia was all of a sudden calling for something that would be interpreted as containment of China, and raising for the first time the issue of China's domestic governance. In the past, we've dealt with China on a bilateral state-to-state basis and not spoken about the nature of China's government. This signalled that there was a shift, again, from early 2017, and we've gone on stressing this, for example, in calling for an inquiry, an international inquiry into the origins of and early management of COVID. We pitched that as an anti-China inquiry rather than doing something with the support of China and building a common diplomatic position. We had to make it adversarial. And a lot of people like me have been saying, what has happened here, and why can't we use diplomacy as we used to in dealing with China without surrendering any Australian values or any Australian interests?
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen Australia being so antagonistic and thrown the rule book on diplomacy out. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a feeling in Canberra that the best expression of Australia's international personality is to be the closest American ally to Washington. And that eliminates any opportunity for an element of difference in emphasis with Washington. It means we're always agitating to get a pat on the head from Washington. So when we made the decision on Huawei, which I am prepared to accept as something being done in Australian national interest for the security and resilience of our national communication system, we went further and we advertised what we'd done. We took it to the US president and we said that our exclusion of Huawei was a model for other Western countries. So we turned it from being a neutral decision only directed at enhancing our communication system, its security, into a pretty high profile decision that we advocated as a model for other Western countries. In other words, we had to gravitate to the most adversarial approach towards China in defence of the exclusion of Huawei. Another example would be the COVID inquiry. We could have simply said, it's in China's interests, it's in the interests of all nations to work out what had happened to bring this pandemic about, and to examine its early management in Wuhan to see whether we could do things better in the future. But instead, our foreign minister spoke about it as being aimed at China, and even to the point where she said we're going to have to send weapons-style inspectors into Wuhan. So it had to be dressed up as a high-profile anti-China bit of positioning.
Yes.
There wasn't a trace of diplomacy in the way we handled it.
Right. So China's grievances, the 14 of them, seem rather reasonable in light of what you've said. Now, will this actually affect...
I'd say that, Julian, my position is different. I'd say
yes.
We've got valid differences with China over the end of legal autonomy in Hong Kong.
Right.
And we're entitled to raise human rights in Western China, the condition of the Uyghurs, for example, and in the adherence to international law in the South China Sea. On all these things, my position is identical with that of the government. But, and I would have used comparable language, but on the management of the COVID inquiry, the management of COVID and the inquiry, and on Huawei, I think we could have used diplomacy and not positioned ourselves so that every inflection took on an anti-China dynamic.
Yes.
It's almost as if Australians have lost their capacity for diplomacy. Diplomacy has served us well in building a bilateral relationship with China that has got us into a position where China buys 46% of our exports. It's in Australia's national interest. And again, it hasn't required us to sacrifice any of our values to have this hugely beneficial trade relationship with China as by far our biggest customer, underpinning Australia's prosperity.
So it's substance that's important, but the timings that, it has been really, the issue here. Now, just moving really quickly on our last question though, on the FTA, I mean, it's coming up for review next month. Will this be a problem in seeing the continuation of that contract between the two countries?
Well, here you've got the difficulty Australia's current leadership has created for itself. There should be enough heft in the Australia-China bilateral relationship with both sides, seeing it as being in their interests, for us to move easily into a review of the free trade agreement and a decision to continue it and to expand it. The review...
Could it end the relationship?
Sorry?
Could it end the relationship, the FTA? Could it come to an end next month?
I wouldn't think so, because it's so overwhelmingly important to Australia. But you see, because our rhetoric has been strikingly and undiplomatically anti-China since early 2017, we're now required to remodulate, to turn on a dime, as the Americans say, and all of a sudden find positive things to say about Australia-China relations to make it credible that we are going to continue and extend this very beneficial free trade agreement. But without anything being said by Australian leadership, some of the anti-China zealots in Canberra have started talking about decoupling our economies.
Yes.
And because the Prime Minister and his Foreign Minister haven't had the courage or the instinct to contradict that sort of advocacy, they're now required to turn dramatically and start talking positively about Australia-China relations to prepare the way for a recommittal and, I would hope, an expansion of Australia-China trade ties.
We hope. Thank you very much, Bob. We'll wrap it up here and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Good, Celine. Thank you.